blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings. I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every.
Welcome in to the Michael Welch podcast. Back again today with Elliot Welch recapping the NCAA tournament first and second round as we are now sweet. Our Sweet 16 is set. Not a lot of upset teams here heading in. We just have number 6 Clemson and number 11 NC State in the Sweet 16 now. So not a lot of, I guess, surprises heading into the Elite 8 here, as the second round wiped any remaining first round stars out of it. So nothing too shocking coming out of opening weekend.
Yeah, I think Clemson was a big surprise for me. You know, obviously I wasn't very high on them. But I watched both those games, New Mexico and Baylor, and other than the last couple minutes of the Baylor game where they seemed like they were trying to lose the game, they've been very impressive. So I could see them upsetting Arizona tomorrow.
Yeah, very, very surprising. So we had our first 4 games, which some folks pay attention to and some don't. But Virginia absolutely embarrassed itself to Colorado State, 67-42, 14 points in the first half scored by Virginia. And we'd in turn then see a pretty terrible performance by Colorado State in their first round game. We'll get to that in a second. Double-double there by Mr. Joel Scott of Colorado State. One of several teams, of course, from the Mountain West making it in, and at least won the opener. So that's something. But Virginia, one of the bubble teams that perhaps was on the wrong side, would have liked to see Indiana State or something like that in there. Wagner over Howard, of course, that was going on as we were recording last time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, our 16 seeds don't last very long. Grambling over Montana State. And Colorado over Boise State in a 10-seed matchup there. Colorado had a nice couple-game run there. Simpson had a really good play in the first 4 there, 19 points, 11 boards. Boise State, another Mountain West team that bowed out early, 60-53 was the final there. And we'd see plenty of points from Colorado in the first round. So let's knock out our 1 seeds real quick. They all won by 25 plus points. The first time that's happened in quite a while. North Carolina easily 90-62 over Wagner, although occasionally get this in the first half where it takes them kind of a moment to get going, especially if these teams are playing a little bit different style, or, you know, maybe they do have a big man that can do a few things on the boards, that kind of thing. But North Carolina eventually took care of business. We had Badcock with 20 points and 15 rebounds there, although not really a stellar outlet for anyone in particular other than a nice double-double there. They did take care of Wagner. We did have 3 of the 16 games then on Friday, and UConn looked pretty dominant, 91-52 over Stenson. It was 52-19 at half. I don't know about you, but I didn't watch more than a couple minutes of that one.
I didn't watch that game at all.
I
did watch their first 10 minutes against Northwestern, and that game was over in the first 10 minutes. The game was completely over. And Northwestern, made a nice little run in the second half to cut it within like 16, and that's probably the closest that game ever got.
Yeah, that was a complete blowout. Purdue over Grambling, 78-50. Houston over Longwood, 86-46. Zach Edey, 30 points, 21 rebounds, 3 blocks in that Grambling win, by the way. And the number 2 seeds all advanced as well. Now, Marquette played a close game with Western Kentucky as a 2-15 seed matchup to begin. 87-69 was the final, but Western Kentucky led to start off there, or led at halftime. We've, of course, talked about how that pace of play might be a little bit too much for Marquette, and they just started bombing threes in the second half there against the Hilltoppers. Did you watch any of that one?
I did watch a little bit of that one. I did think that Marquette would kind of take control, and they really did in that second half. They just kind of took over the game, and Western Kentucky looked like they kind of ran out of answers. But that next game, when we'll get to that, but that Colorado game, Colorado probably should have won that game.
Probably. We did have, what was our other number twos here? Tennessee crushed St. Peter's, no miracle run this time, 83-49 there. Just another great job by the Vols. That just suppressed the Peacocks there. And then we did have Iowa State, 82-65. Now, South Dakota did shoot some decent percentages there, but Iowa State, the Cyclones, absolutely shot the lights out there against the Jackrabbits and were able to advance. Sometimes their offense goes into a hidey hole and just disappears, which is problematic and will probably be the reason they get knocked out of the tournament. I think they actually moved ahead of Houston. Statistically, is the best defense in the country. So just something to keep an eye on there. And rounding out, let's go with the rest of the East games. Florida Atlantic and Northwestern. And we can kind of peek ahead to the games, to the second round. Let's just kind of tackle these together then. So Northwestern beat Florida Atlantic 77-65. And then, like you said, went on and lost to Connecticut 75-58 in an absolute blowout. Florida Atlantic and Northwestern did go to overtime. We did have a lot of turnovers by Florida Atlantic here. I think they were -9 in turnover margin, something pretty wild there. But Northwestern came away with a big win in the first round, and then Connecticut absolutely decimated them to move on to the Sweet 16. Any thoughts?
Sorry, no, I don't have a lot to add there. That's it was an exciting game between Northwestern and FAU. Always pulling for the cardiac cats, but I knew that UConn would just run over them. So
yeah, tough go there. UConn's been exactly as expected. We had our big man there for the Huskies with 8 blocks against the Wildcats and a double as well. Just dominant in that game. He did finish with 13 rebounds and 14 total rebounds, 14 points as well. Not much else to say there. Very dominant. Moving further down in the East, number 5, San Diego State eked out a win against UAB, the 12 seed there. Actually, we had a theme running in our 5-12 seeds for the most part. A lot of poor shooting in a lot of those games as I was going through and recapping. But poor shooting here as well. San Diego State, though, manages to choke out the Blazers 69-65. And we had a big upset. Number 4, Auburn, falling 78-76 to Yale before San Diego State punched them out in a blowout to move to the Sweet 16. Not super exciting, the San Diego State UAB game. Close, competitive, but again,
San Diego State Yale.
San Diego State UAB. Did you watch much of that game?
Oh, no, I did not.
Okay. Yeah. It wasn't a 50-50 game like some of them were, low scoring, but just not a high shooting percentage game. Very good defense throughout that game. And we did get a nice 30 burger here from the top star there from San Diego State, Mr. Ledee, the forward there. 32 points on 11 of 18 shooting, 8 rebounds, and was very dominant on both sides of the ball and led the way there in the UAB win for San Diego State. Now, Yale-Auburn was an interesting game. Auburn had a nice lead in that one. I believe they were up 4 points with just under 4 to go. And Yale went 9 for 9 from the free throw line and hit a big 3 to hold on in this one.
Yeah, it was a good game. I think you could see Yale believe the whole game that they could win it. And it's just one of those matchups where Yale's going to do what they do, which is a lot of motion, a lot of back cuts. And I think teams like Auburn don't see a lot of that. And so Yale put up points. They put up just enough points and, weren't really able to stop Auburn a whole lot. I think Auburn more have stopped themselves and they were able to pull off the upset.
We also had a weird situation where one of the starters was ejected like 3 minutes into the game for immediately getting physical and wiping his elbow right across the back of someone's head, hitting him right in the back of the head.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Can't be doing that in the middle of the game.
Okay.
Yeah. Chad Barker Mazzara. Just 3 minutes in the game there. And by that point, 3 minutes in, you also had John Broom, who had 9 points and 3 rebounds for the Tigers. He finished with 24 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block, but it's just not enough. John, on the other side, Polakidis for Yale, 28 points on 6 for 9 from the 3-point line. Just a good job by Yale to pull the upset there over Auburn. One of the biggest in the first round there of the whole tournament at this point. And then did you watch a whole lot of San Diego State or Yale? I did not watch a whole lot of that one.
I did not watch that one. I think I saw the box score in the beginning, and I was like, I'm pretty sure San Diego's got this under control.
Yeah, just stifled them there. So it'll give us number 1 UConn and number 5 San Diego State there in the Elite 8 in the top half of that bracket. But moving on to the bottom, Duquesne, a little bit shocking, 71-67 over the 6 seed BYU, who was very much met the metrics for a good chunk of the season, top 20 offense and defensive efficiency to become a national champion. They fell out of those metrics as time kind of went along, but you still thought, well, maybe we got something going here with the BYU Cougars. As it turns out, when they struggle to shoot the 3 ball, they struggle to win. Duquesne is not necessarily a super long team, but it kind of looked long while I was watching them. Watched a good chunk of this game. I think they're standalone in this window for a good chunk of the period. And they just really challenged BYU on the perimeter there and pulled a nice upset. I think they led for most of the game. And they advanced to play Illinois, who beat Morehead State 85-69. That was the 3-14 matchup. Of course, your guy there, Terrence. Oh, goodness, I'm getting my names mixed up here.
Yep, that's right.
Illinois shooter. Yep. Torched a very good Morehead State team that kept a reasonable halftime score there, absolutely went off and blew them out to move on to play Duquesne in the second round there, where they put them down 89-63. Any thoughts on this section, these teams? Probably not on Illinois.
Yeah.
Awesome offense, right where you expected there, I would think.
Yeah, well, and again, Terrence Shannon went and had 30 points against Duquesne. So and their other player, Damask, who's really come on late in the year, has just been playing great. And then you've got, Illinois' got Hawkins, who's really lanky. He's been around the program. Like they're built to win some games. So, and they're playing really hot at the right time. So I think the matchup they have against Iowa State will be very interesting.
A triple-double for Damask in the opening game there, 12 points, 10 assists, 11 rebounds. And then Dane Dejuan was 9 for 9 shooting off the bench for 21 points. So a couple records there. We don't usually get 100% field goal shooting on that volume, and triple-double as well. So actually put themselves in the record books there in a few categories, did the Illini. And they'll be playing number 2, Iowa State. Now we had number 7, Washington State beat number 7 Washington State beat number 10 Drake 66-61 in what was probably a better game. I didn't watch as much as this one. This was one of the last games on the slate, I believe it was Thursday. A tight game, not a particularly, no one was going for 20 plus points. It was pretty hotly contested. Drake turned the ball over twice, I think, in the final 2 minutes, and 3 times in the final 3 minutes. That really made the difference in the game. And number 2, Iowa State, then, as we stated, beat up on South Dakota State. And then Iowa State rolled Washington State 67-56 in the second round there. What are your thoughts on the Cyclones and on some of these other squads?
Yeah, they played really well. I thought, especially them really blowing out Houston in their conference tournament. They also came into the big dance playing really well. And I think you've got 2 teams in their matchup, Illinois and Iowa State, who are probably playing the best they've played all year. And that's going to be a great game with some really big playmakers and That should be a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's very much offense versus defense. So that's I think one of the best matchups on the slate. So let's fire right over to the South region, where Houston took down Longwood and played the winner of Nebraska and Texas A&M. I was kind of surprised the Aggies just buried Nebraska 98-83. Nebraska is now 0-10 all time in the NCAA tournament. But the
So sad.
I know. Just no success there at all. Just plowing, just getting plowed there by Texas A&M, who then surprisingly in the second round gave Houston all that they could. Houston had, what was it, a 12-point lead with 4 points with 4 minutes left. And Texas A&M made one of these improbable rallies, hit a big three to send the game into overtime, but Houston won 100-95. It's not too often they give up that many points. Should say something that this squad is able to hit 100 points, though, and it's number one Houston advancing 100-95 over a feisty Texas A&M team that's really been up and down this season. In the preseason, it was thought that maybe they could compete for the SEC. They were never in the mix, but feisty going out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. In Houston, I don't know. What do we think about Houston?
So I watched pretty much the entire Nebraska-Texas A&M game, and other than the hot start from Tominaga for Nebraska, which, was a great story, Texas A&M was more physical, and they lead the country in offensive rebounds, right? Or they're one or two. They're probably depends on which thing you're looking at, but they are. There was no question. Like, they would get 4 or 5 rebounds in the same possession. Like, yeah, eventually you're going to get the ball in the hole. Like, Nebraska just really didn't have a chance, and I think that kind of put you into a blueprint. Obviously, not many teams have the athleticism as Texas A&M and that stat of offensive rebounding to go with it. But that blueprint is, I think, there to beat Houston because they had a bunch of people fall out at the end of that game, right? I mean, credit to Houston for pulling it off, and I think they are different from the iterations of this team in the past that may not have had that offensive gear or that offensive firepower with the additions they had through the transfer portal this year. But they looked vulnerable, and they looked very, very mortal, unlike they've looked for most of the year. And you could say, especially with them, they've played a lot. They played a little up and down here in the past couple games, especially getting blown up by Iowa State in their conference tournament. So they're going to have a lot on their hands with Duke, and I'm questioning really how far they can go. I no longer see them as a team that can win the championship, I think, with their lack of depth and some of the struggles we've seen.
Yeah. Texas A&M, not a very good three-point shooting team at all. Actually shot 13 for 23 against Nebraska, and then turned around and shot 8 for 23 against Houston, which comes out to almost 35%. So they shot well above their about 32% average.
Yeah.
Not great on the free. 29 for 45 free throw shooting, which is about 64%. Still an astounding number of free throws to hit and make.
Great.
Yeah. Houston was 21 for 30 at 70%. But yeah, Texas A&M plus 14 on the boards, and really gave them all they could there. So
that game hurt me too, because I had Houston covering as part of a parlay, and with 4 minutes left, it looked easy. They're easily going to cover, and then they end up in overtime. I'm like, what?
Not good. So yeah, let's talk about Duke here. So in their bracket, number 5, Wisconsin played number 12, James Madison. And this was another one. Neither of these teams shot well at all. But Wisconsin had some sloppy turnovers. They end up getting upset by James Madison team that we had identified as a problematic team, whoever they were matched up against. And the Dukes end up winning 72-61. Meanwhile, in the first round, Duke played Vermont and ended up beating the Catamount 64-47. And one of the they've had their struggles. That wasn't one of their best games. One of their top players there, the center Filipowski, only had 3 points and contributed throughout the box score, but was not a big scorer for them. Then moving on to the second round, Duke did bury James Madison 93-55. That was probably one of their best games of the season. Just absolutely eviscerating James Madison. It's unfortunate. I
they
tallied
couldn't
about
miss,
6.
and they were open a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. I tallied about 6 of the 16 games in the second round as just complete blowouts, which is kind of unfortunate. But then again, we did get 3 games that went into overtime, so that's something. Duke did shoot 52% from the field, 50% from 3. And Jared McCain, 8 threes to lead all scorers with 30 points. He is the freshman on that squad. Filipowski had 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 5 boards, so he dropped off there. I believe he had 14 in the first game. Couple steals, a block, 4 assists, still a solid contributor there. He hasn't had like a dominant game yet, but he hasn't needed to take that volume of shots, but he's still contributing on both sides of the ball. So it'll be Duke and Houston there in the Elite Eight. Thoughts on Duke? I mean, James Madison and Vermont are the teams they've played so far, but they've looked good, and they probably haven't quite scratched their ceiling yet.
Yeah, they're surprising to me. What was also surprising was my disappointment in Wisconsin. James Madison is not a bad team, but Wisconsin was a better team. They went through their ups and downs this year, and they like you said, they turned the ball over a lot. So I think Duke has the talent. Is that, like, if they play anything like they played against James Madison, granted they will not be nearly that wide open against Houston, it should be a good game. I think this is another game we can kind of look forward to and saying like that's a good matchup, and this is where they're going to need Filipowski to really probably carry them. I think the guards will be good matchups. Obviously Roach has been there for ever, as we mentioned last time, and it should be a great game. I think they're very surprising to me at how well they have played so far.
Yeah. Whether you can rely on a freshman against veterans there at Houston, how your big's going to perform. Certainly a lot of questions for both Houston and Duke, but in saying that, teams that are certainly not out of contention for a national championship. So very interesting to see how they'll match up there. In the Midwest, of course, Purdue buried Grambling State, and then they buried Utah State. Now, Utah State beat TCU 88-72 in the first round. Kind of surprising how easily they just disposed of TCU. But Purdue 106-67 when they met the Aggies. A pair of double-doubles for Zach Edey. They're getting the bench in there. Their guards are now sophomores. We've known this for 30-plus games already this year, of course. But making a statement, of course, as a number 1 seed, you're not playing the most difficult teams right now, but one of the most impressive teams beating squads, much inferior squads, as you should, 28 points and like 40-39, something like that. So Purdue on a roll so far.
Yeah, Purdue has been doing exactly what we thought they would do. They're a deep and veteran team. They have a really great roster, honestly. And I really don't see them having any trouble with Gonzaga either.
Really?
I don't. I know Gonzaga's been playing really well, but Purdue's results do not surprise me. I think the Utah State game was close for a little bit, right? And then you see them go on these runs that you see good teams do and just crush teams. You see UConn do that, right? All the time. And you see Houston do that. So those are 3 very good teams.
Yeah. Gonzaga beat a good McNeese State 86-65. Yeah, that was too bad. Up by 35 points at one point before easing off there. It just wasn't even close. That was the 1-5-12. Not the direction you wanted to see it go. I mean, the other 3 were the other 3 games. The number I had here, none of the 6 teams shot over 44%. So they were just kind of slogs, sometimes because of defense, sometimes because of poor shot selection. But in this one, of course, it was supposed to be between two good teams, possible upset, and Gonzaga just absolutely buried them. Meanwhile, Kansas, which has had its problems, struggled with Samford, survived on a questionable call. I wouldn't even call it questionable. A review very much showed that with Samford down 1 point, about 14 seconds left on the clock, Kansas was coming down to score a bucket at a breakaway, and there's a very clean block. I mean, very clean block. Sometimes it's hard to tell of the ball, and Stanton McCray got a nice block there. And even upon review, it still looked clean. A foul was called, went to the line, 2 free throws, 3-point game, Kansas's way with 14 seconds down, and Samford just wasn't able to hit a 3 or recover there. So, and the ball stayed in bounds when he did block it. So he could have recovered, come down, and given Samford a shot to win or tie. It's just a terrible. I mean, that was there were some bad calls in some of these games, like bad calls, but that one was clearly a possible game decider.
Almost as bad as the Trey Burke block, which was clean.
Yeah, agreed. So Gonzaga there smashes McNeese and then plays a good first half with Kansas back and forth. I believe it was a 1-point game. I believe they were down a point before turning it on, absolutely crushing them, 89-68, crushing them. Hunter Dickinson, 15 points and a few rebounds, but did not play very well, and he was the top guy on the squad. Their lack of depth showed, their lack of cohesiveness, and it's just a horrible loss for Kansas.
This isn't, and I think a lot of Kansas fans would say this has not been one of their better teams. It's not been especially what they thought it was going to be. I've watched Kansas a handful of times throughout the year, and the reason Hunter Dickinson was so good at Michigan is they basically ran their entire offense around him, right? And they didn't really do that at Kansas. I really felt like he was underutilized, and they really were not. They didn't play as a team. They're not a lot of movement or motion, right? Hunter Dickinson can pass, and he wasn't used to do that at all. Like, I just really didn't understand why he went to Kansas to be used in a less meaningful way, really. So I think that's really disappointing for them, and I think that also feeds into why I still not a believer of Gonzaga, because I just don't think they've beat very good teams yet. I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw here in Purdue.
That could very well be. I could see that. They've just been playing so well, but you could see how they may have played against some teams that matched up well or have been having struggles, such as McNeese and Kansas. So that could very well be the case. Bottom half of the bracket. Oregon as the 11 seed upset number 6 South Carolina 87-73. The actual betting line might have gone Oregon's way or been a coin flip as we approach tip-off time. We certainly thought Oregon would win this. They beat the blocks off of South Carolina, a defensively focused team who struggled to play defense, which is problematic. Oregon, as we learn, would be a team that was very much 2 players. As Creighton went on and beat Akron in a 3-14 seed matchup, 77-60. Again, Creighton plays 5 starters, but they're very tight together there. They were close with Akron in the first half. Another team that we identified that might cause some problems. Then we saw Creighton and we're like, I don't know. At least I was like, I don't know about that. And so Creighton put them away in the second half. Creighton and Oregon then. 3-11 matchup, 86-73. Creighton over Oregon was the final, and this was the double overtime game, right?
Creighton, yeah, it was a very good game. Super entertaining. And Creighton and Oregon are both very fun teams to watch. So they did end up pulling it away. But they're a good team. They're really solid. I was very impressed with the way both teams fought. And it wasn't like a sloppy game like we've seen so many of the other early round games. So it was very enjoyable.
Yeah, the Ducks just ran out of gas in the second half. Here we go. I got the numbers for you. So Neferli Dante, their big center there, the Ducks' big center, and Jermaine Kuznard. Now, Kuznard had
Hmm.
a lot of points in this tournament. He had 40 in the first game. In the second game, Kuznard had 32 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. And Neferli had 28 points, 20 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks.
Good miss.
Altogether, I know. Altogether, those two accounted for 60 of the Ducks' 73 points, 28 of their 43 rebounds, 6 of their 13 assists, and all 4 of their blocks.
Yep. Sounds like what I was watching. Watching two guys play basketball.
Yep. So they just got tired in that second overtime, and just no lift in Kuznard's legs, and it just struggled to go down. Kalkbrenner, 19 points, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks for the Blue Jays against Oregon. One of 3 players to not leave the floor, I don't think. He might have left for a minute. I think he logged literally 1 minute less than the full time. But again, they don't go into their bench, so maybe that'll be problematic moving forward. And this bracket is almost chalk. Most of these are almost chalk. But Tennessee came out of the bottom. So we had a slog of a game. Colorado State had the Virginia problems who they just beat. There's now a joke going around about how if you play Virginia, now like your next game, you play like Virginia and you're like struggle on offense and just really shitty, basically. So Colorado State played like garbage. 44 points scored. I think they had 11 at half. Texas wins this one 56-44, which is not impressive, as the 7 over the 10. And of course, Tennessee crushes St. Peter's. And then Tennessee plays a close one with Texas, 62-58. Also not a super impressive game, as we're kind of trading buckets going down the line there. I know you are not the biggest fan of Tennessee, and nothing in this bottom rung has been particularly impressive, I don't think. You have any thoughts on, we'll go through our picks in just a moment here, but Tennessee and Creighton will be next up here. Kincaid has been solid, the soon-to-be probably lottery pick for the Tennessee Volunteers. 18 points, 9 rebounds on relatively bad shooting against Texas. He was much better in the first round game against much inferior competition. Kind of struggling sometimes outside of that. Still have a great defense. And we're playing a 5-man group in the Creighton Blue Jays there. But not particularly impressive through the first 2 games.
No, and I'm still not a believer in Tennessee. I don't have much to say other than I hope they lose by a lot to Creighton.
Okay. All right. And finally, the West region, where we have a little action here. Did I skip over?
You did. You skipped over part of the South.
Oh, why didn't you stop me?
You were on a roll.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll go back to the South then, where we had Houston and Duke, the bottom half of that bracket.
Because we talked a little bit about Marquette and Colorado, but we did not talk about Texas Tech, NC State, Kentucky, and Oakland.
We only missed like some of the best games. Yeah, so we have so we had Texas Tech losing to NC State 80-67. NC State just simply there weren't a particular number of stats that outlined that the Wolfpack were a lot better than Texas Tech. They just had a few more shots go down, ended up winning this one by double digits. And they played in the second round. Oakland, another one of the big upsets here, 80-76, 14 seed Oakland over 3 seed Kentucky. And this produced more storylines than any other game of the entire tournament. We, of course, had oh boy, you know me and my names. Golke coming off the bench for the Grizzlies, and his shot chart on the year is crazy. 360 plus 3-point attempts and 8 2-point shots. Does not shoot 2s, just shoots 3s. You think you'd have someone on the perimeter on him. He hits 10 of them in this game. And Oakland runs its offense through him. They do still probe in the paint a few times to try and see if they can get in there. Kentucky causes problems for them, and that's the case. And then Kentucky sometimes takes some questionable shots, and there's a lot of rhetoric now about how Coach Cal is not planning for everyone to get their best looks, and a lot of discord about Coach Cal. It was stated today he will be back for year 16, partially because probably $1 million buyout's a little bit too much to stomach. But Kentucky, a lot of great freshmen on this team again. We don't see as many freshman loaded teams from him as other guys like Coach Krzyzewski at Duke and Bill Self at Kansas have gotten in the mix and fighting him for top recruits in the past few years. But this was another team with like four freshmen, 2 sophomores, and then a couple seniors in the mix in the rotation, and just not great coaching then, and just couldn't get it done against an Oakland team that was bombing threes left and right and just held on at the end here.
Yeah, we talked about last time how inconsistent Kentucky could be, and I think they were just that. And what a tremendous win for the Golden Grizzlies.
Yep, 40 years there for their head coach, and I believe it was their 4th tournament appearance, but only their 2nd win. So just really crazy. I'm not sure if there's anyone that's been at their school longer now that we have some of these veteran coaches retiring. So a huge win there, and they were competitive with NC State as we had an 11 and 14 seed matchup there. 79-73 was the final. It was really unfortunate. I would have liked to see the little guy go a little bit further. And they certainly had opportunities, just couldn't quite get it done there against the Wolfpack.
Yeah, they had a really good chance to continue their run there. NC State's been a surprise as well. So, as an 11 seed, making it to the Sweet 16, you got to be happy for them too. But would have loved to see the Golden Grizzlies win another game.
Yeah, NC State's a big man. Is it DJ Burns Jr. or Burns Jr.? He had 1 rebound in the first game. I don't know how that happened, but he was very dominant in this one. 24 points, 11 boards, just really made his impact felt. And there's a couple really big guys from lesser known teams that are making an impact here. He's one of them. I'm trying to think who the other one was off the top of my head. Maybe it'll come to me. But certainly Burns is making a big impact at the center position that you wouldn't necessarily think of. That also gave them their 7th win in, was it 11 days? Just something crazy. Maybe it was 12 days at that point. So
yeah, I think that's right.
Still rolling.
7 and 11.
Still rolling. So they're on to the Sweet 16. In the bottom half of that bracket, we talked about Marquette holding on against Western Kentucky. Now, Florida and Colorado as a 7-10 seed matchup played a hell of a game. 102-100 was the final. I hope you took the over in this one. A little push off at the end allowed Simpson to drop in a 2-pointer, and that was a win for Colorado. Now, Florida, to their credit, did a great job. Took a couple big shots from their top point guard here, whose name I'll have in just a moment, to kind of keep them in the game there. But this was just, for as many defensive slogs as we had, where teams just couldn't hit buckets, this game did not have that problem. This was one of the best games on the slate. Clayton Jr. hit a couple big threes late, finished with 33 points for the Florida Gators and missed a 3 at the buzzer as well. And for the Buffs, we had 17 for De Silva, 16 for Hadley, 21 for Lampkin. He's not a very good center. I see where they had problems with that. He's not super talented. Simpson had 23 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. I mean, a couple of these guys are going to the NBA for the Buffs. Just a really good job by them. Lots of points, high shooting percentage. Again, you like to see a little bit more defense, but I think there's also a lot more skill here than the 17-10 seed, really indicate. And Colorado would then go on to lose to Marquette 81-79 to 77, but it was still a great couple games for the Buffs if you include the play in there.
Yeah, they were a great team to watch. I think if they could have played just a little bit of defense, they could have gone somewhere in this tournament. They were not interested in that, so and they still could have won that game against Marquette. So it was. I'm really glad they made it out of the Florida game unscathed to give us a great game against Marquette. But yeah, I think they'll have a lot of players going to do some other stuff, and you could definitely see the deficiencies when you watch them, because it was just like, man, just one stop maybe, and just wasn't happening.
Marquette shot 61% against them from the field, almost 43% from three, and the Buffs shot 47% and 33 in that game. They hit 10 threes. But yeah, just not able to quite come up with a win there against the Marquette Golden Eagles. Not a lot of free throws in this game. I was going to note, when I was talking about the 5-12 matchups, we had like 43, 48, and 53 free throws in those 3 5-12 matchups I was referring to. In this one, we had a total of 15 free throws. That's just completely different.
Yeah, I don't think people love to see 50 free throws in a game.
No, you're just stopping the game every 30 seconds. Absurd. So this is one of those that was completely the other side. Not a lot of stoppage for free throws. So we will get the Marquette Golden Eagles, the 2 seed, and one of our surprise seeds, the number 11 NC State Wolfpack up there in the South. Now let's quickly tackle the West. North Carolina smashes Wagoner in the battle of MSUs that opened the tournament. Michigan State, rather surprisingly, just rolled Mississippi State 69-51, led it early, allowed the gap to close a little bit, then pushed it out. Not a lot of problems. They shot a super high percentage here. Michigan State looked pretty good there. They did end up losing to North Carolina 85-69. They took a lead early, fell apart late. Babcock had another good game, but we knew that interior post presence, a big center there, would cause problems for a team that's had center problems themselves for the entire year. So Babcock 18-7, 2 blocks, and RJ Davis 20 against Michigan State Spartans.
I think you saw the Michigan State team, glimpses of what everybody thought they could be this year, and got all the Michigan State fans really excited, coming out hot against North Carolina after really kind of not having a competitive game against Mississippi State. But that turns out to be short-lived, and you saw the Michigan State team that was really there for most of the season just kind of crumble to a team that has it more put together and is a 1 seed for a reason.
It was good to see. I think it was good to see Tom Izzo come out afterwards and just say, basically, I'm going to take this team on a deep tournament run or die trying. That was kind of fun to see. We've been thinking for years that he's going to hang it up and retire, especially because now he's one of these veteran coaches that is outspoken about how difficult NIL is and the transfer portal to manage. But rather than be one of these folks, whether it's football, basketball, or other less publicized sports, that might be heading towards retirement, it sounds like that he's going to see how we can work the edges as far as the transfer portal and recruiting, not in a scandalous way. Just what is he overlooking that he can try and enhance this team and make it better? Because we've been wondering that. Fans have been wondering that for a long time. Are you maximizing what you can do to get a great team together?
Well, you hope so, right? I mean, it does have a little bit of shades of end of D'Antonio era, where there's a lot more lip service than there is action, and there's a lot of people on that roster that shouldn't be. I know we love his son, but he doesn't deserve a spot on the roster of a D1, college, right?
Yep.
And you could say that, Rocket Watts who plays for the Golden Grizzlies, may not have been a great fit, and the other lawyer, who was Michigan, Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan, also not a good fit. They haven't recruited a big man that can do anything, that has stayed on the roster for more than a year, that they can even play on both ends of the court. So he's got a lot of stuff to figure out, and we could do a whole thing on Michigan State. But it was good to see that he's still fired up, but you got to put actions behind that now, and fans need to see that, because there's been a few years here. I mean, the expectations, I think, have not changed, right? Michigan State should be competing for Final Fours and national championships, and they haven't done that in a decade. So,
absolutely. So, yeah, at least excited to see that energy there, and not that kind of resigned, almost quitting aspect. John Calipari looked kind of lost after his press conference, and a couple of the guys didn't look quite as great on their final press conference. So, but Tom Izzo looks pretty pissed. So we'll see.
He's also never beaten UNC in the tournament. Like, that's
and he can't beat Duke, and he can't.
It's not good. I don't know why. He's got to fix that. Like, I know in basketball, it's like the one sport you get rewarded for playing a tough schedule. We can go into that. That's a whole thing too. But losing tough games, I don't think that made this team better this year. I don't think that helps this team. You need to be able to play your Xavier Booker's, and obviously it's not Jeremy Fear's fault that he got shot, but you need to be able to play these players against that competition without fear of losing those games. So
yeah, and I've always been frustrated when he's said things like, I'll go watch Zion Williamson, but I'm not going to recruit him because he's just going to go to Duke. And maybe that's true, but you're not even going to give him a buzz. I point out
that can't be true anymore, though. Not in this day of NIL where everything's out in the open. Like,
I would hope
Michigan
not.
State has NIL. They should be able to pay somebody like Zion and get him on campus. Like, they should be able to do that now. His willingness to do that, I think that's a bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, that was his mindset for like 20 years, though, right? So you would hope that's not the case right now. Is, I'm not going to recruit this kid, he's just going to go to Kentucky. I'm not going to recruit this one, he's just going to go to Duke. Well, all these guys steal players from each other all the time.
Right.
You don't get credit for getting Jaren Jackson Jr. 8 years ago now. That doesn't count.
Especially if you're not going to play him against Syracuse and you're going to lose because you can't throw the ball in the ocean. God, that's a tough game to watch.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was crushed for his handling of him, right? So
who'd they play over him? That transfer
Ward. Didn't they play Ward over him?
No, it was the transfer, the unathletic white dude from wherever. He's only there for one season.
Yeah, there's been so many. Yeah, the one guy.
I can't remember his name.
We'll
never hear from him again. He just disappeared.
1 year.
Oh well, I think his name was Max or something.
Max Payne.
No.
St. Mary's lost to Grand Canyon 75-66. Again, neither team shot over 44%. Grand Canyon just outplayed St. Mary's. Another team that we circled as being problematic, and they did knock off the St. Mary Gales. I don't have a lot of super exciting points for this per se. I think we had a lot of free throws in this one again. Just another one of these grindy games. I didn't watch a whole lot of this, even though I was hoping for a nice upset here. A lot of stoppage of plays, a lot of bad shots. This was college basketball at its finest.
Yeah, Grand Canyon could have won that game by more. They made a lot of dumb decisions, and I think that's the same reason I will say that they lost to Alabama. They would just drive it, 1-on-3, and then not get a call and just turn the ball over. And I really, if they just ran a little more offense, they probably could have beat Alabama, and they would have beaten St. Mary's by more. They just really questionable, strange decisions, which I don't know. Maybe that's what happens if you are at that level, the competition that they play, and they can get away with that. But you can't do that against a team like Alabama.
Right, right. Alabama and Charleston was all that it was cracked up to be. 109-96 was the final of the 4 and 13 seed matchup. Alabama actually had a huge lead in this game, and
They're up by
Charleston
like 30 or something at one point, right?
30 points. Yep. And Charleston, punched back in there a little bit. Alabama, I believe this was CBS's stat. Alabama has the worst defense of any 14, 15, 16 seeds are the only ones that have worse defenses than Alabama. So there you go.
Yeah, I think they're going to get rolled.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? So they did beat Grand Canyon, as you said, 72-61. It was a closer game. Grand Canyon, I think, played decent defense on Alabama. And if they're not hitting their threes, then they don't score as many points, right? Now, Alabama,
Yep.
North Carolina will be the matchup there. And a lot of people think North Carolina is the weakest number 1 seed. I think that too. But when you get certain matchups, you just kind of keep on going, don't you?
I think that's almost more of a testament to just how good the other 1 seeds are. Like UConn is as good as we've seen them. Houston is very good, and Purdue is excellent. So I think it's almost more of a testament to that than like North Carolina being, a terrible 1 seed, because I don't think they are.
Yeah. No, I just think they could have been a 2 seed as well if you wanted to put Iowa State up there. So yeah, perhaps terrible is the wrong verbiage. Just more susceptible to losing, but they still seem to have favorable matchups so far. Now the bottom half of the bracket, number 6 Clemson annihilated number 11 New Mexico 77-56. That was a rather stunning result. Then number 3 Baylor rolled number 14 Colgate 92-67. Poor Colgate keeps getting into the tournament, keeps getting beat up on. They were not expected to pull an upset this year. And then it's Clemson, the 6 seed over the 3 seed, 72-64, as they keep going. Great to start the year in a rather weak non-conference slate. Then got into ACC play and kind of had a lull a little bit. Then they were a bubble team, and here they are, Sweet 16, after blowing out New Mexico and taking it to Baylor pretty good.
Yeah, that Clemson-New Mexico game was over in the first 10 minutes. I mean, New Mexico looked awful, and I don't know how much of that was a function of Clemson's defense or not, but the game was not close at any point. And then really the Baylor game wasn't a whole lot either. They were in control for almost all of it, except for the end where they really tried to give it away. Is what it looked like.
Yep.
I think there was some foul trouble there as well, but still. But Clemson, obviously was not high on them in the last podcast, but they have played very, very well as far as teams that I, have seen that have moved on that I did not expect that they're probably at the top of that list.
Yeah, Clemson was up 10 at the half against Baylor, had a solid handle on things in the first half there, and they held New Mexico. Okay, New Mexico scored a few points. I wasn't sure if it was one of those where it was like 18 points in the first half. They had a 14-point lead on New Mexico at half, but outscored them in both. So just solid all the way through for Clemson, really, in regards to the performance. 4 great halves of basketball so far. Now the bottom half of this. So Arizona is the 2 seed, 85-65 over the 15 Long Beach State, who I thought was one of the worst teams in the bracket. Kind of surprising. They hung with Arizona for a little bit, and they actually outscored them in the paint and out-rebounded them.
Yep.
Kind of concerning, but Arizona fires up in the second half and just blows them out, as they should. And the more exciting game, it wasn't exciting for a while, but 7 seed Dayton beat number 10 seed Nevada 63-60. The Flyers were down 17 points at the under Was this one at the under 8 timeout, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep.
17 points at the under 8 timeout that came with, I believe, 7:19 left to go, so just over 7 minutes technically. And they outscored Nevada 24-4 and win it 63-60. The Flyers come back. Nevada absolutely implodes. The Flyers come back and match up against Arizona in round 2. I think both of us took a break from watching the game at that point because we both turned it back on. I remember texting you, and we're like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah, I pretty much walked away from that one, and I spoke very highly of Dayton. I had him in the Final Four when he made the bracket, and I kind of alluded to it for now, like I may change that, and I did change it before the brackets officially closed. I actually had them losing to the winner of, I guess what's now going to be where Clemson is. So
Gotcha.
I had them. I definitely pulled back on them. They looked awful. They looked horrendous for 32 minutes of that game.
Yep.
I was like, oh my God, why did I ever think this team could do anything? And then you saw just 8 minutes of them just taking advantage and finally, scored 24 points in 8 minutes. And you're like, oh, this team's awake now. But they, and then I didn't get to see a lot of the Arizona Dayton game. I saw or listened to it on the radio a little bit, and then I think I saw maybe the last 12-ish minutes of the second half, and Dayton got within 4 at one point, I think, and that was the closest that got in the second half, and it looked for a minute they just couldn't turn the corner. Like, they just did not look. They just seemed disorganized. They did not seem like a very good team. So I'm still surprised that they kept that even as close as they did against Arizona. I have real questions and concerns about Arizona in this Clemson game.
Yeah, that's understandable. They've looked very susceptible. To say the least. Now, Holmes the second, Dayron Holmes the second for the Flyers, going to the NBA. Very good player. Looked very long in these 2 games. Just a long, athletic dude. He had 18 points, 9 boards, a few steals and a block there against Nevada. Looked pretty solid. And then against Arizona, had 23 points, 11 boards, and 3 steals and a block. So was very productive in his couple of games there. It was fun to watch him for a few games before heading off to the NBA. I think he'll be exciting there. I know the last kid that went there, drafted by the Knicks or traded to the Knicks. He's been on 3 teams already. But I think he'll be an interesting prospect to see moving forward. But on the bottom half there, we will have number 2, Arizona, playing number 6, Clemson, in the Sweet 16. So overall, all of our Cinderellas per se were knocked out. We have no Gonzaga's a non-power team. Everyone else is from the Power 6 conferences, as they say. All our number 1s have advanced. All of our number 2s have advanced. We also have 4 ACC squads from a rather paltry ACC that perhaps wouldn't have even gotten 4 teams in if NC State hadn't won the conference tournament and got the auto bid. So in the East, number 1 UConn, number 5 San Diego State versus number 3 Illinois, number 2 Iowa State. Who do you think goes to the Final Four up there, Elliot?
Yeah, UConn rolls this pretty easy. They are just a different team. You watch them and you're just surprised when they miss, right? I think that's the difference. I took a future on them after watching them a little bit in the tournament. I was like, that's all I needed to see. They just look like a different monster.
Yep.
Now that Illinois Iowa State game is going to be a great game. That will be a good test for UConn, especially trying to slow down if it's Terrence Shannon that wins. Illinois wins that game, or going up against Iowa State's defense. I just think it's really, really difficult to match up with across all 5-on-5 against UConn. They're just all better players.
I think if UConn, it'd be crazy if UConn had to play some run like San Diego State, Iowa State, Houston, Tennessee, right? All these defensive powerhouses. Now, I don't think that'll happen, but yeah, San Diego State's, I think, is actually more impressive than folks think. I want to see if they can do anything to really throw off what is a very deep, very strong Husky squad here. I think it's possible. I think that they struggle to shoot the three sometimes. I just think that San Diego State could be interesting in pushing them around a little bit. Don't know for sure.
I would just love to see if you can make UConn play for 40 minutes.
Yeah,
they look bored after the first 12 minutes. They're like, we're up by 25 points.
Yeah, exactly.
you put the bench in. Oh, we're up by 35 points. Oh, well.
Yeah,
and
Illinois, Iowa State will be very exciting. Love to see great defense, not just like crappy offense, and just like to see sound defense force a good offensive team to do difficult things, not just, we watch some games where teams go through their offense and then take a bad shot. That sucks. Mm-hmm. If it's a good defensive performance, forcing you to your offhand, forcing you into a jump shot, forcing you into your big man just out of the paint where he's not as good. I'm looking at the shot chart from like the second half of Marquette and the blowout game. I think it was the first round one there. Western Kentucky, and like all of their shots, like they hit 8 threes. I think they were 8 for 16 from 3, and all their other points were in the paint right under the bucket. They didn't take a single jump shot in the second half, which they shouldn't, right? So great performance again, but would still of course like to see the top shooter out of there. Your boy Terrence Jr. coming out of there. I think just to see them play Kentucky or UConn, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, UConn to the Final Four, I think. Now in the South, we have, or I guess we should stay on the same side, huh? Let's stay on the same side. The West, North Carolina playing Alabama, and in the bottom there we got Clemson the 6 and Arizona the 2.
So and I kind of changed, I think, from what we originally picked, which I think I had Houston go into the Final Four. I just. And part of this is my philosophy of picking a bracket, which is I love to pick a double-digit seed, or, you like to take that 12-5 and take that 12 into the Sweet 16 kind of thing. Obviously, we didn't quite get that this year. It just seems always boring to pick all 4 1 seeds, just straight chalk. So I actually picked Marquette to make it to the Final Four here. I changed it again before the brackets locked last Thursday. And so I have Marquette beating NC State fairly handily, although, NC State has also been a surprise team. Houston Duke, that'll be a good game. I'm really curious to see if the depth of Houston will get tested here. If they handle this Duke team, which I think should be a great game, will they be able to, a day and a half later beat Marquette, who probably will have an easier time against NC State? It's just my thoughts right now.
Yeah. So you actually went to the South region. Yeah. Well, Houston Duke, I think that'll be another great game. Will Duke be able to perform, as we said, another up and down team, although, probably top 20 team in the country, a little inconsistent. Then Houston, of course, you said the depth has been an issue. And, will the defensive philosophy still ring through? Looks like they were able to get 7 guys solidly in rotation, solid minutes still the last game. But yeah, they're suffering on the front line, which is where Filipowski could be fed the ball. I'm going to go with Houston. Again, I liked, and then Marquette and NC State. Man, when Marquette gets going, they're really good, but ironically, they seem to have some trouble in the paint. And NC State would love to go to Burns down there. So it's very difficult, man, isn't it? I think I'm still going to go. Oh God.
So line right now is 6.5 to Marquette.
Okay. I guess I'm going to go, man, because Duke could come out of that whole thing. This is a lot. I'm going to stick with Houston, I think, coming out of the whole Houston over Marquette, I think is what I'm going to do. And I could be completely wrong.
I think that's safe of you.
Well, Houston was my preseason pick, and I took out a future on Houston, but I also think they have the best coach. They have a great defense. They have a lot of experience. Shaka Smart hasn't even been in the Sweet 16 in a very long time. NC State, I mean, maybe they'll win like their whatever 8th game in 2 weeks or whatever it is, but and then Duke with Schreier and a freshman leading the way, and Filipowski, being a great contributor, but I don't know. I'm just going to lean. I think is the more experienced team. It still has a high ceiling and a high floor.
The under-over in that Duke-Houston game is 133.5. That seems low to me.
Yeah, 133.
Considering Houston's put up 86 and 100 points so far in this tournament.
Yeah. That does seem low, doesn't it? Interesting. Have to keep an eye on that. What's the line on that game?
That game is sitting at 3.5 to Houston.
Okay.
3.5, 4.5, 4.5.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, I'll have to keep an eye on that, I guess. Well,
all right, where are we moving now? I got confused when you said let's stay here. I don't know what that meant.
I just meant on that side of the bracket. I had gone to the west.
See, I was staying on the top side of the bracket.
Yeah. Well, we can go wherever you want now.
Let's do the West.
Okay. North Carolina, Alabama, Clemson, Arizona.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Alabama, as I think I really thought Grand Canyon should have won that game if they played a little bit smarter. I think North Carolina does play smarter. I also think I think this is a good matchup for North Carolina. I think they can really take advantage, and I think they will. I think they will beat Alabama here. Clemson, Arizona. That's much tougher than me, or much tougher for me to pick. I think that's also the first game tomorrow, right? It starts at 4:10 my time, 7:10 Eastern time. And yeah, people be leaving work early here tomorrow in Tucson.
Yeah,
but
that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
why is that one the early one?
I don't know, but I can see Clemson's defense really frustrating Arizona, and if you can get them into taking some bad shots, I mean, I've been saying all year long, this team's going, Arizona's going to go as far as Caleb Love will take them. Will Caleb Love be able to hit more than 2 threes in this game? Or will he be able to consistently drive to the basket and get fouled and get and ones and distribute? I think it's really up to him. And I know Clemson's going to score. Arizona is, really hasn't been known for their defense. So I think I could see that one going either way. I'm almost leaning Clemson right now, and that's I just haven't been very impressed from their first 2 rounds. So I could see that happening, and then you'd get a North Carolina Clemson rematch, right? Because I'm sure they played a couple times during the season, and they did, and it looks like they won 1 and lost 1 against each other. So that could also be a close game. I still have North Carolina coming out of this, but this is probably the least sure of any region that I am.
Yeah. Wondering if we can find a Clemson Final Four future in here, one of these somewhere. That would be worth a look, I think. I'm inclined to take Clemson. I'm wondering if it's, well, I tell you on the back-to-back, I think North Carolina is going to be, the better pick to go to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama's got to hit a lot of threes and play a little D's to make it, and I just don't know what's going to happen. If they do, it's going to be incredible for them to move on, because then they have just as good a shot as Arizona or Clemson, I think, to move to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think the Tar Heels, as much as this team has gotten buried for being, the past few years since Hubert Davis has taken over, for not being cohesive, for not being just a traditional great plow people over North Carolina team, this will be their second great run through the tournament if they win even just one more game. And I think they beat Alabama, and I think Clemson could get Arizona. Might have to check a couple trends, stuff like that, just to really see how I feel about it. But man, if Arizona isn't tripped up by Clemson, like, why wouldn't it be North Carolina? So yeah, I would pick North Carolina to go to the Final Four and play UConn, which would put 2 number seeds, and I have Houston there, so that'd be 3 number 1 seeds. And then if we go to the Midwest,
hold on. Would you change your mind if it was North Carolina versus Arizona, and then Clemson and Alabama, and Clemson beat Alabama and North Carolina beat Arizona?
No, but same as you, I'm unsure and willing to hedge a Clemson Final Four.
Okay.
So
just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, from the beginning, North Carolina, are we, how sure are we of the guard play and all that? RJ Davis has been great. He hasn't necessarily exploded in any of these games. Babcock has been steady, fine. I think what they did against Michigan State was solid. Pushing that game out after trailing early, but they kind of Michigan State arguably shouldn't have been in the tournament at all. They played a 16 seed in the one, obviously, the first game. And, Clemson looked very good against New Mexico and Baylor. I take both of those wins over Michigan State, I think. So, yeah.
And the thing is, this region I was definitely most unsure of the entire time. Like, picking this region was very difficult for me because I didn't, as far as like, usually I know who I think is gonna come out of the region, right? And you can kind of start from there. I really didn't know here, and so I kind of reverted to the one scene. I'm like, well, they kind of have an easier path because I don't really believe in Michigan State, right? Or either MSU, right? So I'm Sweet 16, easy, okay. Well, if I had Grand Canyon originally upsetting Alabama, okay, well then they win that game, okay. And then who's coming out of the bottom? And I'm like, I really don't really believe in Arizona either. So
yeah,
kind of by default, you see him in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's why the Dayton, when you were walking through your Dayton scenario, I'm like, I don't have a problem with any Dayton scenario. I was just happened to be looking at Nevada on the opposite side. So,
well, Nevada should have won that game.
Yeah.
Anyway, you want to move on to the Midwest?
Midwest, Purdue and Gonzaga and Creighton and Tennessee. I like saying it that way. I like that. Creighton.
Crikey. I think Purdue's going to roll Gonzaga. You can't match up really with Edie. You haven't really seen it yet this year. He draws the most fouls in the country, right? And he hits his free throws, and then the surrounding cast is really good and deep. I see them rolling Gonzaga. Great in Tennessee. I can see this being a close game for most of it, and then really hoping Creighton pulls away at the end. I admittedly still haven't watched a lot of Tennessee, although that Texas game was obviously closer at the end than you would probably think Tennessee should play. So I really hope Creighton pours it on at the end and can pull away. But I still see Purdue coming out of this region fairly easily. I think Purdue would beat Creighton or Tennessee pretty badly as well.
So this is the closest region. Purdue is plus 130. Tennessee is plus 230. Gonzaga's plus 450. And so is Creighton.
Wow.
But yeah, Purdue over Gonzaga for me. And I'm actually going to go. I think this is a little tricky. I like Creighton. They really should have gone last year, and they lost by a point to San Diego State in a heartbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Creighton. I've liked them. I like that squad. I like what they're capable of.
They're fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. Tennessee's still a good team. It's just sometimes you worry about the depth, which is a catch-22, because if your starting group is that cohesive and that potent, then the depth is a little bit more of an afterthought and a bridge to getting your starters back in when they're on break or to finish up a game. So I'm going to go. My God, am I going to go Purdue over Creighton? We're just going all 1 seeds, I guess.
Well, I picked Marquette over Houston, so I'm not. That was my rebellion against the straight chalk of all the ones. So
I'm going all number 1 seeds, I guess.
Okay, that's the safest. Seems reasonable since that's what's happening.
And then I don't know. I'd have Purdue and UConn, which is something I picked in several brackets from the beginning.
Yes.
So
that is what I have as well, and I've got UConn winning the whole thing. I hope that would be a fantastic game. Would have 2 tremendous bigs battling against each other in great depth on both sides. I could see that being a really good game.
I see you got UConn plus 210, Houston plus 500, Purdue plus 650, Arizona plus 900, and then North Carolina plus 1100 to win the championship.
Okay.
Then Tennessee, then Marquette, then Iowa State.
So yeah, I think I got UConn when they were like plus 240 or something like that.
I got Houston at plus 2,000.
Wow. Wow, when was that?
That's preseason, I think. It was like in November.
Okay.
Or towards the beginning of the season. Yeah. Gotta hit him early, baby.
Yeah, I had the injuries though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is. You take a shot. But I hit the Heisman winner. I hit, Michigan to win the national championship.
Yep.
Take your shots. So, all right. Well, this was fun, huh?
Yeah. Don't have to eat too much crow for my my Dayton love.
No. Well, this has been the Michael Welch Podcast. Please rate 5 stars on all your platforms. Subscribe. We'll be back with more basketball. I'll talk a little NBA too. And yeah, Elliot will be back. I will be back. Thanks for tuning in to the Michael Welch Podcast.
All my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings. I need my blessings every penny. Daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a